What is going on, everyone? Soliday Holiday here, and today we are continuing our Zero to Hero Keystone Master challenge as a Retribution Paladin. In the beginning of this challenge, I started with a new character, and I'm going to be pugging my way all the way up to the Acheivement Keystone Master. If you have not watched the prior episodes, the rules for this challenge are pretty simple, but also if you haven't watched the prior episodes, at least check out episode 2 and help your boy out, But the rules for this challenge are pretty simple. I will not be trading gold or any other items or anything else from other characters. I have attempted to remove this character from my Raider.io profile, which I'll get to more on that in just a minute. I will not have any help from friends or guildmates, but, have to have friends in the first place to do that. So to start out this episode, we went ahead and opened up our Great Vault. In our Great Vault, we had the loot options of a Band of Callous Dominance, which was a 470 eye level. That was a 29 eye level upgrade for what we already had. A Band of Twisted Bark, which was a 460. It was a 19 eye level upgrade, and then a 441 back. It was pretty easy to go ahead and choose the 470 ring, but we sadly lost a lot of haste, but we gained a whole lot of crit. After equipping the ring, that put us at a 454 item level. So from here, we went ahead and killed the world boss, and we actually got the same neck that we got in the first week, but it just didn't have the socket. We completed the Ally of the Dream Wardens, we completed the Dream Seed, Super Bloom, and the Aiding of the Cord. So I decided to open up all the caches at the same time. Out of the Satchel of Dreams, we got a 441 head. Out of the Harvested Dream Seed cache, we actually got a 441 neck. Out of the cache of Blooming Treasures, we got a 441 Arctic Warden Sabatons. So this was actually a lower eye level than we already had, but the thing about this is it was a veteran level piece of gear, so we would be able to upgrade that to even higher than what we had currently. So while we were actually opening our caches, right, we actually got invited to a guild. I did actually accept this, and I'm not going to be grouping up with any of the guildmates or anything like that. But the reason why I did accept this is because I wanted to get the faster hearth, right? I'm tired of waiting at the end of dungeons, waiting for my hearth to come off cooldown. So from here, we upgraded the boots that we just got to 447 item level, which put us at 454. So at the start of this week, we did start out with a 642 mythic rating, and we started our adventure this week with a plus 11 Everbloom. We got into the plus 11 Everbloom, and I did the classic of the entering the dungeon without changing the difficulty, right? So everybody had to leave, and I had to change the difficulty to actually mythic, and we went back in. So once we got into the dungeon, we actually started going through it, and I'll tell you what, is the monk was easily carrying us in DPS, and we were moving through the dungeon super quickly. At this time, I kind of want to talk about what I said earlier with the Raider.io, and I believe in full transparency, and I wanted to tell you guys about this. So I don't know why this happened, but when I started this challenge, I removed my character from my Raider.io profile, right? I unclicked the box on Raider.io. When I logged in to record this week's episodes, I saw that my main's mythic rating was on my paladin. It was showing. I don't know why it was doing this. It wasn't showing last week. It might have been because I was still too low of an eye level. I don't know what's going on with it, but I tried multiple times to go to Raider.io and unclick it and click it, unclick it, save the profile to see if that would change anything, but it didn't do anything. So I think I waited for 3 or 4 days, and I logged back into my paladin and it was still showing. So at this time, I made the decision to go ahead, and I wanted to run keys for you guys and make an episode for you guys, but I am only running my keys. I will not be applying for any dungeons. I will not be applying for any groups. I will only be starting my own group and getting applications from there. I know in the past is whenever I'm applying for groups, I don't really pay attention to the group leader's mythic rating. That's my personal. I never really pay attention unless I'm starting to get higher, right? But these are a couple low-level mythic dungeons, and I didn't really think that it would be too heavily considered. So at this time, this episode, we are running dungeons with my main's mythic rating showing, but they are only my dungeons. I am doing the groups for them. So all that being said, right, we continued on with the dungeon and we killed Weatherbark with 0 issue. We continued on with the next trash and we killed the Ancient Protectors, and we continued to the Archmage Soul, right? But I'll tell you what, is the Archmage Soul fight was a rough one for me. Towards the end of the fight, the Glacial Fusion ability actually formed 2 circles where I got trapped. If I would have reacted to this ability sooner, I could have positioned myself a little bit better, but because of my little bit of a late reaction, I got trapped with nowhere to go, and I got trapped and hit by the ice. But the ability happened again, and as soon as I saw the ability happening, I was trying to get into an area where I could avoid it, right? But it made the perfect circle where I could not get out. But thankfully the heals was paying attention and made sure that I didn't die, so we were able to continue on and kill the boss. So after we killed this boss and we were continuing on to the last bit of trash, after that was all killed, we actually still had 2% of enemy forces that needed to be killed, right? So we ran back and we killed this rock spine stinger. Sadly, after killing that only added 1%, so we had to go and find another mob. So we went down to and killed this group, but sadly the healer didn't come with us and the mage DPS ended up dying. The tank and I almost died also, but thankfully we were able to live and kill the trash, and so that way we could continue on to the boss. We then killed the boss with no issue, and this actually gave us a plus 85 rating, which put us at 727 mythic rating overall. So the tank actually got a 457 waste, and we didn't really need it. It was only a 3 eye level upgrade for us, but the tank didn't need it at all, so we were able to get it and able to equip it, which was awesome. So out of the plus 11 Everbloom, we actually got a plus 14 Waycrest Manor. In this dungeon, when we were forming the group, I decided that I wanted to try to take a couple lower eye level people and a lower mythic rating people, so that way we didn't get carried hard like we did last dungeon. In the last dungeon, the monk carried us pretty hard, so I was trying to even it out a little bit. That being said, is I think that I took a little bit too low of people. Our DPS for this dungeon was super low, and I don't think that everyone necessarily knew the fights. Everybody in the group was super chill, and I actually had a great time, but we just didn't really have a whole lot of DPS, and it definitely showed. So I will say is I felt pretty good about this dungeon. I felt like I was using my rotation and my ability and my utility and everything to not really the best of my ability, but I felt like I was growing as a Ret Paladin. I felt like I was doing better. I think that this was due to me not really relying on anybody else. I felt like I had to use everything to the best of my ability for us to continue on. And I will say is I think that helped me grow. I feel like it helped me grow as a Ret Paladin. So that was really cool to see. I felt really good about everything that I was doing, utility and everything wise. I will also say is that Spiteful is a whole lot worse to deal with as a melee DPS than a ranged DPS, right? On my Warlock, I can just slow down the shades and run away from them, and it's not that easy as melee. It is very nice that I can use my hammer on my Paladin to stun them, but still at the same time is that you really have to watch out for it as melee DPS. I also downloaded a new nameplates profile for this dungeon. I didn't really like it, so the next dungeon I did end up changing it. We almost wiped on the group leading up to the Soulbound Goliath, and on the trash in the courtyard, everyone but the tank died. I'm pretty sure this was mostly due to the group not interrupting as a whole, and I was also definitely guilty of this, and I could have done better with my interrupts. We then wiped on the trash in the courtyard closest to the Goliath. If you do not know, these mobs here cast Infected Thorn, and if you do not interrupt this ability, it causes a whole lot of damage to whoever it is targeting. So we went to the Goliath fight with 13 deaths in total. As we were fighting the Goliath, the hunter ended up getting soul thorns on them and was far away from the group. One of the things that I've learned as ranged DPS is that if you can get close to the group and you can kind of stack with the group, you're definitely going to be better off with the soul thorns. But before we were able to kill the soul thorns, the hunter died. And I could have used my mount ability to get there faster. It's just, I'm still not used to having it at the moment. And I know that one of the things that I struggle with using the mount ability is that I know that the Ret Paladin has a lot of ranged abilities. So like I was just trying to hit those and the hunter just ended up dying. So I battle res the hunter and we continued on with the fight. Sadly, the hunter got soul thorns on him again and he actually died again this time. I then got soul thorns on me and almost died. Sadly, I used my shield earlier in the fight because I thought soul thorns was going to come on me, but it didn't actually hit me. So it was kind of a waste. They were able to take soul thorns off me, but then soul thorns got put on me again and I did die. Luckily, the tank and the healer were able to kill the boss before the wipe. We then killed Rao with no issue and continued on to the basement. This is where the dungeon fell apart. While we were trying to kill the first area of the basement, the group ended up wiping twice. After wiping twice, the hunter left and the key was depleted from there. This was definitely not our best work in a dungeon overall, right? The group and myself could have played better, but I want to show you guys the bad along with the good. I don't want you guys to just see the good, so here's a bad one. After this, our 14 Waycrest Manor actually got depleted down to a 13, so we got a group together and started the dungeon. This run went a whole lot better, and I felt like everyone knew the fights, and we also didn't have to deal with Spiteful, which was all very helpful. At the beginning of this run, the tank did an awesome pull where he pulled a whole lot of mobs and we got to do some major DPS, and that was a whole lot of fun. I will say is I try not to track my DPS with the Witch Sisters because I feel like everyone always sucks on DPS with these in this fight, but we were able to kill the bosses very easily. The heals in one of the DPS ended up dying in the trash, leading him to the Goliath, but we were able to then continue and kill the Goliath with 0 issues. We were then able to go through the rest of the dungeons with a couple deaths, but no other real issues. Lord and Lady Waycrest died easily, and we ended up 3-chesting the dungeon. This gave us plus 114 rating, which was put us at 841 mythic rating. We actually also got a 460 petrified Witcher plate greaves from this chest. This put us at a 455 item level. From this, we also got a plus 16 rise. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I really didn't feel like we were ready for a plus 16, so I downgraded it to a 15. I honestly didn't feel like we were up for a 15, but I wanted to go ahead and try it. After this dungeon, I actually went to the gear upgrading person, right, and I wanted to upgrade some of our gear. I upgraded our weapon to 473, our chest, neck, helmet, rings, legs, and waist to 463, and then upgraded our shoulder and wrist to 447, and this actually ended up putting us at a 458 item level. We then ran our plus 15 rise. This was a good group and it was an easy group. The tank also had this really cool owl appearance, which I thought was awesome. I've never seen that one before. While fighting Tyr, I made sure to at least get 5 orbs for that max haste buff that I was talking about last episode. We then killed Tyr and we continued on to the hallway where we have to run through the orbs, right? And I absolutely got destroyed. I was not doing well on this one, and it took a couple tries before I was able to make it through. We then made it to the time lost battlefield. So as we were killing the tank and it moves on to the second phase of the boss, we had a couple people die, but sadly, actually what the main thing is that the tank ended up disconnecting. This really didn't seem intentional to me. Some of the guys thought it was, but sadly we waited for a while, but the tank did not come back. So this was our second key that got depleted for the week. We then got a group together and ran Rise on 14. So for this dungeon, I realized that we didn't have any lust for the group, right? So I went to the auction house and I bought drums for the run. But as you'll see at the end of the dungeon, I didn't use it a single time, but it's the thought that counts, right? We went through the first half of the dungeon and we just had a single wipe, but there were no other issues besides that. We then got to the time lost battlefield fight. And I didn't know this before, but when fighting the final boss of this fight, right? Whenever he kills some mobs on the battlefield, he gets a buff. So if you can, you want to kite the Blade Storm away from the gold mobs, and you want to face the shockwave from the mobs also. As you can see in this one, I didn't really do a good job, but it's a learning experience, right? As we were walking to the final boss, we actually watched the rogue get pushed off the platform by the swirlies. And I don't know if you know this, but you can't just wait for everyone to go through the portal, then resurrect, and you'll actually resurrect into the icy cave area. So that way you don't have to walk all the way back. We then killed the final boss and only one-chested the dungeon. This gave us a plus 117 rating, which put us at a 958 mythic rating overall. We then used our crest from this dungeon and upgraded our weapon to 476. From this dungeon, we actually got a plus 15 Everloom, and we went ahead and got a group together and started the dungeon. So one of the things that I will say that sucks just in general about this week, right, is that I want to do dungeons that I haven't done on this affix. I want to be able to bump up our rating as much as we can. It's nice to be able to do high mythic level dungeons like the plus 15s and that kind of stuff, but I do want to do ones that we haven't been able to do. And so it would be nice to be able to apply for groups, but I just don't want to do that because my main is showing on my paladin. And yeah, it just kind of stinks. And I would love to really do the mythic dungeons that we haven't done, so that way you guys aren't seeing the same ones over and over and over again. Starting out our plus 15 Everbloom in true classic Pug fashion, right? 3 of us actually ended up dying to the first pull. It was a huge pull and it was a lot of fun, but 3 of us did end up dying. So we started out with the dungeon with 3 deaths. But what I will say is everybody in the group was doing a lot of DPS and doing really well. This was also our first dungeon that had Spiteful back on in a minute. And so it was definitely difficult to deal with. After the first 2 mob groups, right, we actually had this really weird pull where we still had a naturalist and a dread petal up top, and the tank tried to pull them down to the group of dread petals at the bottom, but the naturalist was still up there casting choking vines and the other things, right? But we were able to kill the group. I don't even think that the tank technically knew that the naturalist was up there. I think that he just thought that he came down. So I will say is that this dungeon truly cemented the fact in my head that I hate Spiteful as a melee. It just sucks as a melee. Truly, I think I said it earlier, but on my Warlock, I'm able to just slow and walk away and continue DPSing. But as a melee DPS, Spiteful, you're just sitting there AoEing mobs and you may not even realize that you have a Spiteful on you, just completely destroying your health. And it truly, yeah, just Spiteful as a melee, it truly sucks. There was times where I was getting groups together and they're like, hey, I think that we have a little bit too much melee. You might want to get some more ranged. Like, just saying. And I will say is that it gives me a new appreciation for being a melee DPS with Spiteful for sure. I don't want to say I'm going to avoid it in the future, but it's definitely going to be kept in my mind in the future. And I will say is I've been really working on trying to use all my CDs appropriately and pretty much use them on cooldown, right? And I felt a huge increase in DPS, and I know it's crazy, right? As I actually use my cooldowns and get more DPS, it's a crazy concept. On the Ancient Protectors fight, I am definitely going to have to get used to dealing with the positioning as a melee still. I found myself struggling to position myself around the pools of damage and still DPS. I also recognize at the end of the fight is if I know when the ability is coming, I can run away from the boss a little bit, so I need to pay a little bit more attention there because I found myself not being able to attack the boss appropriately because there were pools all around the boss. But we were able to kill it and move on to the next trash. On the next trash, I ended up walking straight into one of the ice things, and also not everybody but was doing their best on interrupting mobs. I also could have done a whole lot better on my defensives, but it was 100% my fault. I just walked straight into it. On the Archmage Soul fight, the healer actually ended up dying close to the end of the fight where the boss was almost dead. And I think that honestly, when it comes down to it, I think the reason why he died is because he was healing me, because I was about to die, because I suck and I was running through things and I was just getting a whole lot of damage. And so, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the healer died because he was trying to heal me. That being said, right, is I'm pretty sure that Archmage Soul fight is probably one of my least favorite fights at this point. I don't know if it's just because I ran Everbloom way too much this week or what, but I was not doing well by the end of it. I was getting hit by everything. So we're just finding out a bunch of things that we don't like this week. I guess that's the end of it. But once again, as we were coming up to the last boss and we killed all the final trash, we still had 2% again. So we ran back and we really quickly were able to kill 2 of the stingers. I don't know why there was 2 stingers here this time and not the first time that we dealt with this, but there were 2 stingers here, so we were able to get the 2% really easily. So we killed the final boss and we actually ended up getting our Keystone Master achievement. Let's go. That means that we're done with the challenge, right? Nah, I'm just kidding. It's the other Keystone Master achievement that we want. But we ended up completing this dungeon, which gave us a plus 53 rating to our mythic rating, and that put us at a total of 1,011 mythic rating. So we're almost halfway there. We actually received the waste that we received from the tank earlier when we ran to Everbloom, and it was the same item level, so we just sold that. After that dungeon, we ended up upgrading our ring to 473. So we then headed to the Revival Catalyst, and at this time we had 8 of the abilities to transform some of our gear to tier gear. So what I decided to do is I decided to transform the head. I already had shoulders, so I decided to do the chest and I did the boots. But I'm a dummy and I forgot that boots don't apply to the tier set, so I actually ended up having to transform the legs to tier set also to get the 4 set. So I kind of looked at what the tier set does for paladins. And so paladins have an ability called Expurgation, which is a passive ability that causes your Blade of Justice to burn the target for 37,000 damage over 9 seconds, right? What your 2 set does is it causes your Expurgation to last an additional 3 seconds and deals 30% increased damage. Also, when casting Judgment or Divine Toll on a target, Expurgation causes Wrathful Sanction. Wrathful Sanction is an ability that condemns an expurgated enemy. What this does is it deals 100% of your attack power to holy damage to the target and up to 4 nearby enemies. So then we also got our 4 tier set, which allows for Wrathful Sanction to grant Echoes of Wrath. And what Echoes of Wrath does is this causes our Templar Verdict or Divine Storm to deal damage a second time at 25% effectiveness, and it doesn't consume our Judgment. So we got our tier set, and I'm really excited for the future to be able to test this out and see how much our DPS increases or what that feels like. So this is actually going to be the end of the episode. We end today with a mythic rating of 1,011, and we also end with an eye level of 458. This was a huge episode for us. We did a lot of double-digit mythic keystones, and we also got a lot of gear and gear upgrades. That being said, let me know what you guys think about everything regarding the main mythic rating showing up today. I couldn't think of a better thing to do other than to wait for next week to be able to do this, but I wanted to get a video out to you guys as soon as possible, and that takes me like a day or two to edit. I didn't want you guys to be without a video for a while. So let me know what you think, and also if you're still here and you like the video, go ahead and like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I'm very thankful for everybody. You guys have a good one.